Welcome to Andy's Chomping at the Bit. Welcome to Andy's Chomping at the Bit, brought to you by Big Andy Media, the official sponsor of Andy's Chomping at the Bit. Today's topic is going to be grief. Before I get into this topic, there was an incident last weekend, and it ties with grief, but it also ties with several other topics coming up, one of which would be trauma. I'd argue that PTSD and trauma can, go right into together on that one, though it won't be directly on PTSD. Definitely will be trauma, though, and some other areas within that. Essentially, this past Friday, while working on the roof, my dad was over here helping me at my house, and long story short, he fell off the ladder when he was getting off the roof. He was in a bit of a hurry. Several things went wrong between as far as him, myself, and then to some point just freak accident. But he ended up breaking his back. He had let's see if I get this right, a combustion fracture on his L2 vertebrae. Fortunately, it combusted out, so he's not paralyzed. But it is a bit of a recovery period. So this is how it ties to grief. I realized, I knew this in advance, but I really gained a better understanding as far as firsthand that grief doesn't only come from death. Grief exists beyond just someone dying. I was afraid of that kind of loss when it happened. That was my first thought that popped into my head. Not that he died from the fall, but that he was going to. And that was scary. That was very scary. I can still visually see it happening. I can still hear it happening. Can you imagine that? Hearing it. Right down to the hit and the reaction afterwards. There's a blessing with remembering the past in great detail. It's one of those gifts that I have. That's why I do a whole thing, Daily Biscuits, as far as video cast, where I do trivial tidbits twice a week. I remember these things. But with everything, there's a balance. And so it's a blessing, but there's also a bit of a curse with it. And that's you remember things like this in vivid detail for practically forever. I can still remember when I broke my back in 4th grade and when I refractured it in 8th grade. I remember those details pretty much like it was yesterday as well. But it's harder when you see someone else do it. Fortunately, my dad had never been injured before as far as breaking a bone. He's 68, and this is the first time he's ever broken a bone. First time he stayed overnight at a hospital, and first time he ever rode in an ambulance. And he tied the family tradition. It's now a family tradition as far as breaking backs. My grandpa did it, I did it, and now my dad's done it. It's not really a tradition you want. Hopefully the next generation breaks that one. No pun intended. There's a bit of a shock component when something like that happens. So there's 5 stages of grief, and I wish I could say I was instantly aware of every one of them as they happen. There are some that I'm aware of, and there's some I'm not aware of until right after they happen. Denial, I'm not 100% sure if I was totally in grief mode or if it was just how I was mentally handling a crisis, an emergency. But early on, I didn't think it was going to be that serious. I thought, just like he did, I thought it was by the way he was reacting afterwards, I thought maybe that he just bruised his back, strained his neck a little bit. So I thought that he'd, go to the hospital, probably get a little brace or something, some kind of painkiller, and be out later that night or the next morning at the earliest. Well, it didn't happen quite like that. So I guess the severity to an extent. As far as anger goes, and I was aware of this, I figured this one out pretty quickly. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure if I was going through grief or if this is just part of the trauma of an accident. But when something happens, something bad happens, we want an answer. We want to have something to put the blame on, a reasoning for it, so we can focus it all in and say, this is why. So at first I was like, well, must have been the ladder. Well, no, it's not the ladder. The ladder was fine. It was dirty. I asked my dad if I could spray it off real quick. I suggested spraying it off real quick before he decided to go down the ladder. He said no, and instead of arguing with him on it, I said okay, and I was spotting him the entire time he was on the roof because I was afraid he was going to fall off. He'd never fallen off the roof before, but I'm scared of heights, and so somehow my fear projects onto, I'm afraid that he'll fall then. So I was using my past experience of cheerleading and basically spotting around the house the entire time he was up there, with the idea that if he does fall, I can at least lessen the fall. Probably would injure me as well, but it would reduce the significance to his injury, and depending on where he fell, it could also save his life. That was my thought process. So I was spotting him the whole time, except for at that moment, I turned around to set the pressure sprayer down for 5 seconds. And that's not an exaggeration, literally 5 seconds. And as I was turning back around, I heard a slip and a rattling sound from the ladder, and I saw him falling and briefly grab the gutter and then hit his back. It wasn't like a flat fall. It was the upper back slightly twisted, and I could still hear it. So I was angry at him for not waiting. Let me spray off the darn ladder. Let me at least hold the ladder. Let me at least get in a position to spot you. I got angry at that. And then I felt bad for getting angry at him, so I looked at the situation again and I got mad at myself. Why did you turn away then? Why didn't you just hold the ladder? Why didn't you insist on spraying it off? Why did you give him the option of declining? The reality is, accidents happen. Trying to argue on the reasoning isn't going to take it back. And in this situation, it's really not going to improve the future. There was a series of small mistakes, some small errors, that ended up in a big injury. But the injury could have been significantly worse. He's expected to make a full recovery in about 6 months. The way he landed, like I said, I originally thought he was going to die. That's how extreme it looked. He free fell on his back, good 8 to 10 feet. And he's 68 years old. So, almost 69. It was not an easy sight to see. Like I said, I was scared. So, but I'm going to go focus more on grief here. I mean, yeah, grief as a whole, the stages. Because I don't know where I'm at right now on that. I wish I had an answer. I don't know if I am grieving. I'll learn more in the coming days, in the coming weeks. And I tell you what, it's moments like these that I am so proud and thankful for therapists. I'm thankful and supportive of therapists and the idea of therapy in general. But this is why it's good to be comfortable with that idea. It might not seem like a lot, but psychologically it can do little things that if you don't pay attention, it can cause bigger problems. Anyway, with grief, I almost forgot. So this happened on Friday evening. When I left the hospital, I was there on Saturday, all day Saturday. So left Friday night, got there Saturday morning, all day Saturday, left at like 9:30 at night. I think it was 9:30 on Saturday. Woke up on Sunday. I did not go in on Sunday. My brother and sister-in-law were there along with my mom. My mom was able to drive him home later Sunday afternoon. My brother and sister-in-law were there, and they were able to go ahead with getting the bed set up and everything for him and making the transition to the house easier for him. But when I woke up, and really for most of the day, Sunday, I felt for the first time, I'd say for the first time in 2.5 years, give you an idea on that, September 7th will be 3 years clean and sober. So 2.5 years, for the first time in that stretch, I felt defeated and lost. And though I felt this before in the past, on this last one, it's been a while, not at this level, I felt mentally exhausted. And mentally exhausted is pretty understandable. A lot happened. I was also a little physically exhausted, but mainly mentally. But the defeated and lost caught me by surprise. And this I relate to depression, not the clinical sense in this situation. I guess I'd relate it to more of a trauma depression or a grief depression, In the past, this is where I would have dipped out for distractions. This is where I would have relapsed on the drug addiction. This is where I would have relapsed on the sex addiction. I would have relapsed, without a doubt, on the food addiction. But I didn't this time. And there's several reasons why. One of them would be I have solid structure in my life. I have a healthy routine. Even though this changed my routine, I had safety measures. I had people that I could talk to, and I talked to them. Some of them. I had limitations because, out of respect to my mom and dad, I didn't share this information until, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, I was finally given permission to be able to share it. So there's limits on that. But I had a routine. I had been working on myself, my mental health, and my recovery for quite a while here. And I have been in a position where I have been able to devote a lot more time and energy in that first stretch, particularly the first 2 years, where I could put a lot of time and energy into my mental growth and my recovery. I'm still doing it now, and I'm not letting off. It's just I have a lot more responsibilities on top of everything now, and that's okay. That's life. Like I said, I was fortunate that I was able to solely focus on some of those things early on. But because of that, I was able to build up a very good sense of self-awareness. And this helped me because I knew that I was struggling. I was struggling, that defeated feeling, that lost feeling. So I created a list, and I won't lie, I'm a bit proud of myself now. I wasn't thinking about pride at the moment. At the moment, I was thinking about just making it through the day. So I had to remind myself on why I do the things that I do. So I created a list called My Whys. I got this list in front of me. Let me read it to you guys. And this list isn't just my whys for my recovery. This isn't just my whys for personal. It's not just my whys for professional. It is all of my whys. Why I do what I do. What are my reasons? So my whys are: because I deserve to be happy. Because I want to pursue what I love. Because I owe it to myself the opportunity to pursue my dreams. Because I am capable of overcoming obstacles that I once thought were not possible. Because I won't let doubt and fear dictate my life. Because I can always learn and grow. Because I am capable and I am able and ready to give and accept love. Because success comes from getting up and learning from mistakes. Because I want to help change and end the stigmas around addicts and people with mental health diagnoses. Because every day I can make a positive impact in someone's life, even if it's simply a smile. Because I have the love and support of an amazing family, friends, and extended community. Because I can ask for help when I need it. Because I want to share my light to help others through darkness. Because I have the power of choice. Because today is a new day. Because I am worth it. I made this list because I needed to have a conscious reminder. I needed to see it. I needed to say it. and I needed to hear me say it. And then I printed this list. That's why I was able to read it right now. I printed it and I put one by the computer. I put one on the mirror in my bedroom. I put one on the mirror in the bathroom. I put one on the fridge. And I have one sitting in the car. And at some point every day since then, I have read this list out loud. Even when I didn't feel like I needed to. It's become part of my routine. Because I realized how important it is for me, for the sake of consistency, consistently working on myself, consistently bettering myself, consistently driving through when I don't feel motivated. I created this list. Within grief, there's also the third step, which is bargaining. I know I skipped to depression earlier, but bargaining is a big one. And by the way, there's a ton of YouTube videos, particularly there's a ton of funny YouTube videos about the 5 stages of grief, and I'm planning on making one through Big Andy Media in the near future. But anyway, bargaining's that third one. So the first one's denial, second one's anger, third one's bargaining. This is common, I feel, with when we have survivor's guilt, which will be a topic at some point, where you're kind of making a plea like, take me, let them live, take me. They use it even in, excellent example of this is if you've ever read the book or seen the play or the musical or movie now, Les Mis. Jean Valjean pleading that God takes his life and spares the life of Marius. That's bargaining. Of course, Marius was still alive at that point. There's a whole, I'm not going to go into that story, but that's part of it. Trying to figure out a way to, how can I make this, how can I correct this? How can I change this? I think this would also fall into, how can I go back and change this? The time machine concept, the world of regret. Then the one that we're common with, the one we are always, at least I'm usually afraid of in the past, and that's depression. The hardest part about grief is the sad. It's hard to cry sometimes. Sometimes you're hurt so much and you're in so much sadness and pain that you can't cry. I don't know if anyone's experienced that. You want to so badly, but you can't. It's just like it won't come out. It's not like you're afraid to. It just won't happen. But it's part of the process. If there's one thing I can say that I absolutely love, there's several things I can say about this, but from the Buddhist practices, is that learning to embrace and not fight feeling. Not just joy, but sadness as well. You feel sad, you feel depressed. And instead of trying to avoid it and trying to run from it and trying to deny it, just feel it. The suffering is significantly less if you stop trying to dodge it. Just feel it. Don't get consumed by it, but feel it. And I can say from my experience since learning that it does help. Yeah, it hurts. It hurts a lot. That's why we're scared of it. That's why we try avoiding it. But when you feel it, you're able to move on, and that gets to the last one. The last stage of grief is acceptance. And I think a lot of people are scared of that when it comes to losing loved ones. They're afraid of going through the stages of grief because they are afraid that when you get to acceptance that you are officially saying goodbye, that you almost feel guilty for accepting. But you shouldn't feel guilty. That's part of life. And as far as grieving death and grief in general, it's a part of life. It's not the most pleasant part, but it is a part of it. And when you're grieving something, you're not losing it necessarily. You're not leaving it behind. You're accepting the outcome. You still have your memories. You will always have certain aspects of whatever you're grieving. It's still there. I'm not 100% sure how much I had to deal with grief on this incident because like I said, he didn't die. It's more trauma-based, I think, than it is grief. But it popped into my head, and it's been relevant this week, along with in the recovery community, actually both recovery communities that I participate in as far as locations, up north of where my parents are, as well as down in my area now in Grand Rapids. Both recovery communities lost people in the recovery community from the same cause, relapse, an overdose. And so there's a lot of grief throughout the community. I wasn't close necessarily to either of the individuals from the groups. I knew one of them much better than the other because I was part of that group for roughly a year. So I got to know her a little bit better. I was able to travel up to that area and see some of my friends from up there, show support, show comfort with them as well. It's not easy to handle. And I'm not just saying that as a recovering addict. It's a tough subject. It's a tough process. And there's not a timeline. I know it's something you don't want to put off forever. I know some people try doing that. You have to grieve. I mean, you don't have to, but it's for the best that you do. For your best. And those around you, the ones that care about you, they grieve. But I don't believe you can put a timeline on it. Some people want to do it in a weekend. I don't think that's possible. I could be wrong, but I don't think it is. I've never been able to grieve in only a weekend. Some things I can grieve in a shorter time than others. I wish I had an answer for everything on this. I sometimes wish that there was another way, but there isn't. And if you're looking for a positive with grief, if you're looking for a positive with loss, it's the memories. It's the memories from the moments. It's from the lessons, the experiences, the opportunities within all of it. You can be thankful for the moments you have. I think too many people take those things for granted. And then we live with regret or sorrow or shame. And it's not necessary. We don't have to like the outcomes, but we can't change them once they've happened. It's about choices. It's about learning from the past and the present. Learning to move on, learning to grow, and learning to grieve. That's today's episode of Andy's Chomping at the Bit. Next week, I was going to do PTSD next week. I'll let you know what I'm going to do next week. I have a few good options. I have a long list that I've compiled of topics to come up with. I might actually do learning. It'll either be learning or goals and habits. Those are two topics that I've been wanting to do. So learning or goals and habits will be next week's topic. Unless something out of my knowledge changes, then I can always adapt it. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, I'll see you again next Friday for another Andy's Chomping at the Bit. Also, you can always tune in on Mondays and Wednesdays for the Daily Biscuit. Those are video casts on Facebook and YouTube. Have a good day. Take care. Andy's Chomping at the Bit is brought to you by Big Andy Media.